Good afternoon. We're here at the Oz Arab Media Studios with one of our main contributors, Dr. Jamal Rifi. Dr. Jamal is a community activist, very strong voice and opinion leader in the Australian and the Lebanese community groups. We, or most of our viewers, know him for his work during COVID. But Dr. Jamal, talk to me a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing, something that our viewers probably won't know.
Thank you for hosting me, Jay. Definitely, my last thing it was involvement during the COVID pandemic. But I feel that there are things that I have done. Nobody talks about them. First of all, I'm very happy for the fact to say that I think that I am the only one that has managed to get an Aboriginal dance group to perform in Lebanon, and not once, twice. And the other thing is, I'm very proud of my achievement in terms in the medical field. I was in the position to be able to help a lady in Lebanon to receive a kidney transplant in Australia, donated by her brother. And that's something I look with pride to it. At the same time, I managed to get an Iraqi boy, 5 or 6 years old at that time. And he had issues that in his esophagus, that he could not swallow solid food. And his mom was feeding him mainly fluid, so, you know, just to sustain him. And I managed to get him in Australia. He did his operation and was very successful. And I know at that time that when he arrived, he was 16 kilogram. And by the time he left, he was 30 kilogram. And I believe, finished his HSC in Iraq, went to university, and is doing quite well. And also my achievement in terms of during the pandemic, not just in Australia, but we managed to play a good part in sending 34 intensive care unit machines for people, respiratory machines for people who've been suffering from COVID to the Palestinian Authority in Palestine and in Gaza.
Thank you, Dr. Jamal. You have made a significant contribution to residents of Sydney and abroad, both multilingual, multi-faith, and multicultural. What is the driving force behind your work?
I believe the driving force, first of all, for me to become a general practitioner was the sudden death of my younger brother. He fell sick. He was taken to the doctor. He was given an injection, suffered an anaphylactic reaction, was very unwell, and my mother took him with my brother to the hospital, and unfortunately he passed away. At that time, I mistakenly and erroneously attributed his death to the doctor that saw him in Lebanon. And I wanted to become a general practitioner. I want to become a good doctor that saves life rather than kills children. Later on, I studied medicines, and then I became aware there was no way for that doctor to have known that my brother was allergic to the injection that he received. And all that was the driving force to become a good general practitioner. The second force in my life, that in Lebanon, I used to live in Tripoli, and I used to live in Belebbe, the Kubbe, and we were a hard-working family. My father was a mill, tahan, and he used to do flour and amah and wheat and everything. And in local community, he tried to help the local community, and his effort imprinted in me the fact that there is not just me and my local community. We need to thrive. We need to get better. We need to get educated. And I reckon he was also, his community work was a driving force for me. These two events shaped my life without any doubt.
The personal, the family, and that community influence. Thank you so much for sharing that. Could you tell me a little bit more about your work as a medical educator?
As a general practitioner, after many years and you gain a lot of experience, I felt that it is my responsibility to the newly student in the graduate university is to give them a little bit of that experience. So I used to host medical students in my surgery, teach them about the practice, type of medicine, how to practice, and all that sort of things, and give them from some wisdom into putting things together, achieve a good diagnosis and also a good bedside manners. At the same time, graduate doctors, they need to do, who are doing general practice, they need to do a rotation by working into different practices. And my practice was also a practice that was they can learn about general practice, and also give some lectures to medical students from time to time.
What an outstanding contribution to the
Thank you.
community. Your legacy extends beyond Sydney and overseas. Tell me a little bit more about the work that you've achieved in Palestine.
In 2017, I had the chance of going to Palestine, and I timed my trip to be 100-year anniversary of the Balfour Promise. And as a Muslims, it is my duty to also go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And so I went to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, I did my prayers, and I saw Al-Quds. Jerusalem is a city that I believe no one will feel strange to that city. At least I didn't feel strange. I feel like just that's where I belong. And I saw the Palestinians who were living in Jerusalem. And when I say Palestinian, I say it's actually Palestinian Muslims and Palestinian Christians. I visited the Al Aqsa Mosque. I visited all the churches and in the old town, of course. And I got to see the suffering and under occupation, and kids, parents, family, they go through. And I felt that it is my duty, like everyone else, try to relieve that suffering. And I was part of a small group of Australian who went there, and we went and visited Palestinian hospitals in East Jerusalem and in Nablus and different part of Palestine, and you get to meet with the doctors, nurses, and also the parents of unfortunately very sick kids. And we developed a program that the mother or the grandmother with the sick child, and we're talking about mainly two illnesses, kidney failure and also cancers of different type in childhood, that we organize transport for them to go from the village to the hospital where they need, and from the hospital to their village. Most of the hospital in Palestine, they were not able or equipped to deal with that type of diseases and illnesses. And the Israeli hospital in East Jerusalem, they would look after them and they will treat them and they go back into their villages. And to be able to do that, they needed to cross a lot of checkpoint that's done by the Israelis. So we had volunteer. We developed a volunteer system where the Palestinian volunteer will take them from the village down to the checkpoint, and we have an Israeli volunteer who will pick them up from the checkpoint to the hospital, and after they go and finish their treatment, also they return them and they go back. And that was with our help or without our help, that child would have need to go through that system. We just wanted to make it easier for them. So by doing, you know, the transport, but also we spoken with Palestinians who were living in Israel, for to give them a little bit of social support.
Social services and
So yeah,
support.
and a lot of them they didn't speak Hebrew, and they do translation, but the majority of the nurses in those hospitals they were Arabic speaking, because they were Israeli but they speaks Arabic, so they actually also they do a little bit of work with them, and also in Gaza we had a lot of volunteer that before the war they used to pick them up from Erez crossing and they drive them to East Jerusalem to do their cancer treatment, or they'd go take them to hospital to do their kidney dialysis.
So
And
supporting children and families with essential transport and medical care.
that's true.
Crossing
One.
that border must have been very challenging.
Look, it was, but it was something that's actually I knew it's going to be difficult, and I thought it might get me into hot waters, and it did, because people has actually felt that my work in a totally different prisons. That's the way I see it. I saw it that during my week that I spent there, that I ate from Palestinian food, I slept in their hotel, I walked their path wherever they walked, and I felt part of them, and I felt what they were going through. And before I left, I've asked a religious leader if it is permissible for me to go, and the word that I was given that, and I'll say it in Arabic, then I'll translate it. زيارة السجين لا تعني الاعتراف بالسجان. That means when I go and visit a prisoner, it doesn't mean that I acknowledge the one who imprisoned him or her. And that's, as a medical practitioner, that I felt it is a duty on me. And I actually did not know about that possibility till I met with the then New South Wales Governor General, the Dame Mary Bashir, because she did that trip. She expressed that to me at that time when she was in a hospital, and she felt that on this side of the room there was an Orthodox Jewish woman looking after her child, and on this side of the room it was a hijabi wearing woman looking after her grandchild, and both of them they shared the suffering and the love of their kids. And when she expressed that to me, and I felt I better do that trip, I better see it by myself, and I did, and I'm glad I did.
So I wouldn't really say, there's that bridge between the two countries, but definitely as a medical professional, breaking that divide and obviously seeing firsthand the suffering and the care needed for families must have been a significant achievement, but also a challenge for you. Now, you touched on this a little bit, got yourself in hot water, which tends to happen when you're starting something new. Talk to me a little bit about your legal battle in Lebanon and how that is progressing.
Well, you're absolutely right. First of all, I was part of a group of Australian. One of them is my good friend, Ron Finkel, who is a Jewish person, lives in Melbourne, and he started Project Rosanna at that time. Now it's called rosanna.org. And so we became friends, we worked together, and we facilitated many things together. Now, this, after I came back from Jerusalem, I put in local Arabic newspapers about my trip, about my impression, and about how we can practically help support the Palestinians who have been under occupation for so long and suffering their health, because there was a great disparity between the Palestinian health system, which is great by itself, but when you're comparing with the Israeli health system, in certain specialities. They didn't have enough to deal with that type of illnesses. And we thought that is actually when we could bridge that gap between the disparity of the health system by training doctors, training nurses, and also giving the children the treatment that they need that they cannot have it in the Palestinian health systems. I put it in a newspaper a week after my arrival in 2017. Then, probably about 2 years later, someone told me that Al Akhbar, a newspaper, they sniffing around about my trip to Jerusalem. If I'm happy to talk to them. And I said, yeah, I'm happy to talk to them. So one of the journalists called me and I was very frank. Yes, I visited Palestine. I helped them. And I had nothing to be afraid of or nothing to be ashamed of. And I have nothing to hide. And the same journalist, she spoke with the Palestinian representative in Australia, and he spoke in favor because before I have left, I spoken with him and got his approval, and also got the approval of the Palestinian Authority to go and visit. And then there was an article in Al Akhbar newspaper. I twisted the facts from what I have said and what the Palestinian ambassador have said. And then later on, it came to my knowledge that there is a court case against me in the military court in Lebanon. And I said,
Can you explain to our viewers what the military court is, how it functions?
well, look, I didn't know how it functioned, all right? But there is my initial reaction. I'm a civilian, never been a military person. Why would I be sent to a military court? Take me to any court, and I'll be happy to defend myself. Anyway, the only reason why they sent me to the military court, because the military court was controlled at that time by Hezbollah party, and anyone who opposed Hezbollah would be sent to the military court and will be fined guilty. But anyone who support Hezbollah that goes to the military court will be found innocent because they control it 100%, unfortunately.
Must have been a very emotional time for you, and obviously a very new challenge. The government got behind you here in Australia to support you, but what was one of the main challenges that you faced during that time, being a healthcare professional, experiencing political issues amidst all of the required care that Palestinians needed at that time and now?
Look, to be honest, you label anyone as a traitor, and that person will react very negatively. And I was labeled as a traitor. And I was labeled a traitor to the country that I love, to the people that I care about, and for things that I could not comprehend why. And I was waiting for them to give me the chance to defend myself, to defend my position, and to inform me about their processes so I can appoint lawyers and everything. And that never happened. I only knew about my court case from the media that belongs to Hezbollah. I have not received any official paper from the court, not just me. Even my brother in Lebanon hasn't been notified of my court case. We could not appoint a lawyer. I only knew that there is a court case against me and about the verdict and from the media and nothing else.
Obviously, an unintended consequence of that medical work that you were trying to provide overseas. What would be your advice to other medical professionals looking to support the same citizens overseas?
Look, to be honest, Chay, I reckon it's not my medical work and it's not me. I wasn't the intended outcome of Hezbollah's court case. It was my brother's reputation because they wanted to label me as a traitor. So my brother in Lebanon, he will be the brother of a traitor because it was a political decision rather than a criminal decision. I reckon the decision was made by scrupulous peoples in Lebanon who could not find anything against my brother Ashraf in Lebanon, and he was very outspoken against the corruption that's taken place, and also very outspoken against the political process that existed, and against Hezbollah being an arm of the Iranian. So, unfortunately, I reckon I had to pay the price of being labeled as a traitor for not something that I have done at all, but I wasn't the intended target. I reckon it was my brother. That's my belief. So my advice to other health profession who are able to help the Palestinian, go and do it. Don't worry about them. Go and do it. Because if your conscience is clear that you are doing the right thing by yourself, by your family, by your profession, go and do it. Because they need a lot of help that we can offer them. Definitely they should.
يعطيك العافية. Thank you for sharing that. Explain to me a little bit about how the Australian government, members of parliament, got behind you in this work during the time and even now.
Look, to be honest, when I found about that I was sentenced to 10 years hard labor in Lebanon, I found out from the media. So I actually wanted to know more about what's happening. And I was in touch with the Australian embassy in Lebanon. And at the same time, with my brother, and we got all the documentations. And we just found that the military court actually contravened the Lebanese law more than myself. Let's say I did something wrong. They did probably about 15 things wrong. And what happened, all their meeting, court session, were held without any representative on my behalf, but they were also held at the height of the lockdown in Lebanon, where nobody was supposed to travel or meet, and you've got different so-called panel in the in that court.
The absence of procedural fairness.
There is no procedural fairness whatsoever. I mean, I wasn't given any fairness. I think I was sentenced even before anything else.
Tell me, the members of parliament here, how did they get behind you during this time?
Well, when the decisions happened, at that time, Marie Spain from the Liberal Party, she was the Foreign Affairs Minister. And to her credit, and was unsolicited by me or by anyone that I know, she just put a tweet condemning that decision and praising my effort and encouraging me is to stand up to them. And at the same time, Penny Wong, she was the shadow foreign affairs minister. She is now the current foreign affairs minister. Also, she put a tweet, and only recently, one of her representatives, he welcomed the move against that decision, that unjust decision, and hopefully soon they will find, without any doubt, anyone who will look into the file, my file, they will find that military court broke the Lebanese law 15 times more than what I did, because I did not break any law whatsoever that I acknowledge. I did not visit the enemy. I only visited the friends. I visited the Palestinian. I did not visit the Israelis. And that's where I did. That's what, and time will tell.
A massive setback, but that hasn't stopped your work. Look, if we could move on to a separate note now, looking at the healthcare system now in Palestine, given the conflict, it's only gotten worse. What would be, or how would you rate the urgency of providing healthcare and medical relief to people in Palestine now?
Extremely, extremely, extremely urgent. The health systems in Gaza is decimated. Hospitals, doctors, dentists, they are either killed or impoverished, and they have no equipment, they have no places to do their medical trade. So they would need a lot of support. And we have seen a lot of countries that they did a lot of field hospitals, and but that's not going to be enough.
General practitioner, let's talk a little bit about the direct consequence of conflict on the healthcare system. But if you could provide us with a little bit more information on the indirect consequences. So you were doing that work before as part of Project Rosanna. Talk to me about the direct consequences on the healthcare system and the indirect that we don't often hear about.
Can I say one thing first? Project Rosanna, they are still providing a a clinic in Gaza to treat Gazans right now, as we speak, even during the war. We partnered with another American organization and we are providing our help. Of course, there is no transport from Gaza because Gaza is locked down and there is war and everything, but we haven't stopped of helping even a little bit. But we also working with a Palestinian organization of building, actually the build is already done, but equipping a rehabilitation hospitals for them and training the doctors and the nurses to provide some rehabilitation. Urgent needed that. And work never stops. Now Gaza is uninhabitable place on earth. It need to be able to be functioning, and hopefully in the day after there will be a rebuilding of the infrastructure, but also caring for the people over there because those people they have suffered long enough.
Talking about your current legal battle that's still ongoing, what was one of the biggest emotional setbacks for you?
Apart from the fact that I was labeled as a traitor, to be honest, the emotional aspect that hit me the most is I knew that my mother was dying and I couldn't go and visit her. And I made many trips to Lebanon whenever my mother was unwell to assist with her care and everything. But unfortunately, when she passed away, I could not go to pay my final respect. And still, I have not been able to read the Fatiha on her grave as yet because of that decisions. And I'm fighting it tooth and nail because I want to go and perform my duty as a son. And to also, I've gone through this process many times with lawyers. And if I can say, it is actually my friend Stephen Stanton. He put his hands up to actually take the case on a pro bono basis and take it to the highest court on earth to reverse the decision. And I want to thank him for that. My legal team in Lebanon, they are working very hard at it right now because I want to go visit Lebanon. I want to be able actually to go and visit my mother's grave. It's something that I unjustly was prevented from doing so.
Thank you for sharing that. You've helped so many people in the community, especially during COVID. Is there any way that our community can get behind you during this difficult time?
Look, to be honest, I reckon is actually the communities have already been behind me. And I could see it even during COVID. People were used to come in and the one that they were aware of my court case because they would say that's actually, it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. And up till now, people when they see me and they talk about me and says actually, you tell me when you want to go to Lebanon, is actually I wouldn't mind going with you. So I want to thank my community for supporting me. And can I say is actually when I say my community, I'm talking about my Lebanese community as at large, because I felt that I belonged when I visited the church and when I visited the mosque and when I visited a temple. These are people that's actually that I lived and shared my meal and my life with them. And look, we in the Lebanese community in Australia, we've gone through a lot. I mean, after the Cronulla riots, you know, we worked hard to build bridges between the Lebanese community and people from Sutherlandshire. Okay, and when the Parliament, New South Wales Parliament, recalled, or the government recalled Parliament in December, in the middle of the holiday, there was three people being acknowledged in that parliament, and that was Philip Rizk, Jamal Rifi, and Randa Katan. And these are people that I've always worked with, and that's why we worked with many like-minded people in our community about forming organization that bridge the you know the contact between Lebanese of Muslims religion and Lebanese of Christian religions, and to work together, because in Lebanon we had a lot of interactions. In Australia, we wanted to have that interaction at the same time, and we worked on it. And as you see, it's actually, when I say it's actually Lebanese of Muslims background, but I care about Lebanese Christians in the same way I care about other people. All right, this is my religion. Someone else's religion are respected, and that's what we want to teach our kids in Australia, especially that our kids, Lebanese Muslims in particular, they have been targeted by an ideology of hate, which is totally against everything that we stand for. Because Islam, as I know it, and as the majority know it, and Islam as mainstream people know it, is a religion of peace. What these ideology of hate is hijacking the core basis of Islam and politicizing it for their own political advantage. And that's when we saw the rise of Daesh, and Daesh is a monster of too many heads. And when I say that, because there are too many security agencies worldwide, they have created Daesh, didn't find from nowhere. And the deposed Bashar al-Assad is one of them.
There is so much increasing tensions between the different sects, not just here in Australia, but overseas, particularly now that the new regime, military regime in Syria has come into effect. Dr. Jamal, could you talk to me, obviously as a healthcare professional, somebody that's worked overseas, talk to me a little bit about some of the pressing issues that concern Muslim communities here in Australia?
Without any doubt, since the war in Gaza and the war in Lebanon, and the way the international community responded to the atrocities that took place, there was a lot of tension in Australia, in the Muslims and the Jewish community. And I felt that our social cohesion as a nation was affected. And talking about the most pressing effect in the Muslims community right now, we speak in probably a week after what happened in New Orleans, and I persons that recently become Muslims, he did a terrible things doing his car, killing innocent people, enjoying themselves. And Muslims community in Australia was shocked by that action. And now we are even more concerned that the rise of ISIS operative online that may be targeting our boys and girls again. And we need to be very vigilant by not allowing this happening on. And so far we've done very well in Australia because we prevented something like this and happen. Unfortunately, in New Zealand, we weren't so lucky because you've got also some people on the far right who were wanting to do bad for us and harm for us. And unfortunately, we don't want anyone from our community to do harm to anyone. And we've seen the attack that happened, took place, uh, you know, in the church, unfortunately, and all that sort of thing. So radicalization is very important that we can
Pressing
combat it.
issue. Definitely. How can the federal and the state government support a better relationship with Australians, the Muslim faith, especially to stop the radicalization of youth?
Look, to be honest, I reckon the federal government, successive federal governments, have done quite a good job, and they would have a very good understanding. I mean, our federal police, security agencies, they are well in tune of what needs to be done, and they have been doing it to their credit. But lone wolf is very hard to predict. We want actually our Muslims community to be the eyes and ears of, you know, the rest of this nation, because mums and dad, brothers, sisters, friends, they will be the first one to notice if there is any sign of something bad will happen or someone is intending to do something bad. And I reckon they should be very careful and then tell their family or call the hotline agencies hotline. That's on general way. We know that our mainstream mosque, they never been a recruitment place for anything that's radical. We've seen that, you know, small places, backyard preaching areas, and they will do the wrong things. In Australia now, I reckon the majority have stopped. The fear is online, and I reckon the government they needed to step up their online surveillance for something like that.
On that note, Dr. Jamal, we're looking ahead this year, federal election. What policy issues do you anticipate being part of the national conversation?
Without any doubt, I would say strengthen Medicare, because everyone knows in the health system that health did not receive the funding it did need to receive. And in the last couple of years, we felt that a well provisioned, sustainable, effective, and economically viable health systems need more injections of fund, and I think if they should do that as a matter of priority. If I can allude to certain fact that unfortunately different sides of politics will think about this matter differently. We have in Canterbury Bankstown's area, we needed first of all to rebuild Bankstown Hospital, and there is a decision for that to happen, and there has been a new injection of fund for an improvement for Canterbury hospitals. We're putting a lot of efforts to improve the health care of our local community by putting more fund, enlarging these two hospitals that, you know, treat most of our communities. As a nation, I reckon definitely health Medicare will be need to be empowered and will be given some more money, and also the Aboriginal health systems they need to also to give them a decision making in the way Aborigines treat each others and that sort of things, and we need to get more medical students of Aboriginal heritage. It's very important. I reckon these three will be the most important locally, nationally, and the Aboriginal one.
Your work also touches on immigration. Tell me a little bit about your work within Australia supporting immigration, especially in the Middle East.
Look, I was part of a group who were given advice to the government, successive government, about 4 or 5 governments. So I've been there for a while. about the need of refugees coming to Australia, and especially the one that were coming by boat. And I visited every detention center in Australia. I visited Manus Island twice, Christmas Island probably three times. And so I was involved in that process. I was quite shocked that in Manus Island, I, we had a group of Lebanese due to all the corruption that took place in Lebanon, and because of the economy being just going downhill, and because of the unemployment rate that was rising in Lebanon, people start to become, you know, refugees in their own countries, and they started to flee Lebanon. And I met a couple of numbers of Lebanese that they actually traveled to Indonesia, to Malaysia, and then they went to Indonesia, took a boat, and came in to Christmas Island. They were intercepted, and then I was shocked by the fact that we had a lot of Lebanese that they have drowned in the boat, and we played a role in their repatriation of these people that they were in detention in Manus Island, and their detention would have been for life, because the government at that time made the decision that they are not going to let anyone alive coming into Australia.
Signals a much bigger problem for Australia. So we touched on the focus on Medicare in your previous response. Talk to me about immigration and that policy issue.
Look, right now, to be honest, is actually Australia is on top of things. The issue, it actually visited me 2 years ago, when people from Tripoli, they took a boat, and to escape the poverty and the situations in Lebanon, to escape Lebanon, to go to Europe. And unfortunately, they their boat sank, and all of them, they have died. And I was following that event, and just could relieve the trauma to their family, for all the kids and the women and the men that they have drowned. And I've heard that at that time, people, they wanted to retrieve their bodies to give them a proper burial. And I worked with my brother, and about certain avenues that we could help. And they've said that's probably if we could send a submarine to Lebanon. So I searched, worked with other Lebanese from different part of the world, and we found a submarine and we had a deal with that submarine to go to Lebanon, and we wanted to do it very quick, very quick. But the issue, it came that Lebanon, there was a blockade about technology that can be used for civilian and for military purposes, and the submarine was one of them. So instead of actually getting the submarine in 3 weeks' time, we actually got the submarine to arrive probably 9 weeks, because we were delayed, and we had to change so many things to be able to get. And I think that's the only submarine that ever went to Lebanon, and we sent it there. It arrived actually to the Tripoli port, and from the Tripoli, the first day it was big, big seas. They went there and they just couldn't retrieve the body. It's very unfortunate, but we laid a wreath, and you know.
Talk to me a little bit about how you and your brother supported each other, the community, especially during this time of crisis, because you're speaking on behalf of many Lebanese and Middle Eastern families here in Australia, seeing this trauma and tragedy play out firsthand.
Look, first of all, this should not have happened in the first place. Lebanon is a country where Lebanese enjoy being there. But unfortunately, the north of Lebanon was starved of any funding from the Lebanese government. And also, a lot of their own money were lost in the banks, and they could not get their own money. And that's why I'm saying that's actually we need Lebanon to change course. We need a president that cares about the Lebanese. We need a government that will improve the economic situations in Lebanon. We need people uncorruptible, and we needed the military and security Lebanese police and army to be the dominant and the only force there. And they need to work to the benefit of the Lebanese and not to the benefit of the Iranian. And corruption should be stopped. And we've seen it too many times for too long. It's about time for it to stop.
Definitely, those complexities are still there. To recap, what are the top policy issues that you anticipate would represent the Middle Eastern groups within Australia at the next election?
Ooh, that's a very hard question. Policy that Australia can do that will support ARIC, and they're already working on it, and that is to have a two-state solution where Palestinian state and Israeli state live side by side in peace and harmony and have peace in the Middle East.
Thank you, Dr. Jamal, for joining us today on Oz Arab Media. We would love to have you speak again with us, and I'm sure most of our viewers would share that same sentiment. If you can give one piece of advice to all those watching today about how to best get behind you and support you during this challenging time, what would that be?
If you see me walking in the street, stop me and say hello. If you have any questions or you like, to ask me anything, you can just actually contact the Oz Arab Media, and I will be happy to come here to answer any of your questions. I'll leave you in peace, in happiness, and in prosperity for us in Australia and for us in Lebanon.